studio with New York Times best-selling author John Gilstrap.
Good morning, sir.
Well, that was a fun, if not gruesome, interview with our last guest.
It's Diane Fanning. It's always going to be gruesome. She does true crime.
That's a phenomenal area that she's chosen to specialize in. Because she's not making stuff up. It actually happened.
Right. And she gets really deep into it, and that level of research into that level of stuff. If you recall, last time she was here, she was actually deeply communicating with serial killer while he was in prison. He wanted her to attend his execution, and she drew the line there that she wouldn't do that. But I don't know. That's not my thing. I actually don't even enjoy reading that stuff.
Because it really happened.
Well, yeah. I mean, it gets to the level of yuck, and I don't know how you sleep after that. I mean, you see stuff that you just make stuff up. I do. I just make it up. I just have the imagination. I don't follow through with it.
Yet. Our guest in this segment is the Chief Health Officer for the Berkeley Morgan County Health Department. He is a doctor. His name is Kevin McLaughlin. He is not a sports doctor. He's an actual doctor. Kev, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm envious, man. You've had there's like the Tiger Slam where you go to you win 4 of the majors in a calendar, I guess like a 12-month year, not necessarily the actual calendar year. And you've kind of done that with sports in the last year.
Yeah. Life has a way of kind of telling you that you need to take opportunities when they present themselves. So, I started out last year. Now, I applied for, and I do this to almost every event that you can do to, for the Masters, and I ended up getting tickets, and good friend of mine, Luke Christie, and myself went down to the Masters, kind of made a long weekend out of it.
Did you do the Saturday-Sunday round or the whole 4?
We just did Sunday.
Okay.
I had never been there. He had been there before, and we actually kind of stopped along the way, played a little golf, and then went to the Masters and drove back. Followed by the 150th, the Kentucky Derby. Mm-hmm. Had to go to that. Went to the Friday, the Oaks Day, as they call it, and we also did Kentucky Derby Day. That was a blast. We ended up with paddock tickets, and basically so there's 2 different things at the Kentucky Derby. You can either be in the infield, which has a separate entrance, or you can go in through the main entrance, and then it's separated from the paddock area, which is basically from the grandstand outside. Or you can have designated seats. I guess I chose poorly to a certain extent. Wasn't quite sure, but ended up with the paddock seats. Still had a blast. We got to see all the horses come down in front of us, all the jockeys mount and have them parade out. Saw all that stuff. But actual race, we ended up watching a lot on the monitors. We did sneak in one time on Friday during the Oaks. Once most of the big races were there, we kind of snuck up to the real nice area and got to watch from Millionaires Row, which was really nice.
Now,
do
you have to wear special clothes to the Derby?
Have to, I think, is the wrong answer, but I think tradition says that you should dress appropriately. So I had a sports jacket on, had a nice collared shirt. I think I had dress shorts, and had my Kentucky Derby hat, as did my friend, as did my our wives. So we all went down there and just had a blast. That was just a neat. And we stayed actually downtown Louisville, and walked around Bourbon Row. Had some dinner, did a bunch of stuff. I think part of it is that area is such a walkable town that it was really neat to just kind of be downtown and go. So when you get tickets, you actually many of the paddock tickets and grandstand includes free parking, so they actually had you parked at another location, and they bust you in, and obviously they bust you back out. A little bit of a line waiting to get in and out, but in the big picture, it was great. It was a blast.
Now, you also did a Super Bowl and the Final Four this year too to complete your Grand Slam.
So, yes, friend of mine works for the NFL Films,
right?
And had been encouraging me for years to take him up on the opportunity to buy tickets. So I purchased tickets to all the events. Nothing was gifted to me. But as I said, when you get the opportunity, sometimes you just gotta say yes.
Yeah.
So we kind of picked this out a couple years ago, mapping out where the games would be for the Super Bowl. And New Orleans kind of is a great town.
Great city.
Great town. And so I took him up on that one. And my son Colin and I went down there. It was originally going to be my wife and I, and she's like, you know, he's going to enjoy this a heck of a lot more than I would.
And he did.
Oh yeah, he had a blast. And I encouraged him, and you know, we had spoken about it. He ended up applying for press credentials, and lo and behold, got some.
Sure.
And I think he just had a blast. Had some wonderful interviews. You know, one-on-one with Super Bowl players.
Yeah.
And I think he had a blast walking around, doing some talking, and you know, mingling and doing that kind of stuff. So
he did a great job.
I've been in New Orleans with a big convention, which was maybe 5,000 or 6,000 people. Mm-hmm. How many go to the Super Bowl? 50,000?
It's probably close to 80,000
Yeah.
that attend the Super Bowl. That does not include all the other
Hangers on.
So what is
media?
It's massive.
What is the quarter like during
massive?
You can't move, right?
So, my wife and I went. We like going to big events, or I do, I guess. Did Mardi Gras before we had kids. We knew we wanted to do that without bringing kids, because that's
not a place to bring kids.
No. But when we went, I think it was 96. They measured, I think, 1.2 million people in 1 square mile.
Goodness.
During the height of Mardi Gras. So just the Super Bowl was very similar.
And you like that?
I liked the event. We went early to the whole Mardi Gras, did the whole experience. So we went, I think, Thursday through Wednesday, and you could see it building. But actually, at one point, there was so many people, we almost felt we did feel overwhelmed, and almost to the point that we just kind of skirted around everything. But the roads there, the streets there are so walkable. You can actually go. It's a little bit of a circuitous route, but you can get around and avoid most of the big crowds and kind of enjoy what New Orleans has to offer. Great food, great outdoor experiences.
Did you have to make your hotel reservations for the Super Bowl months in advance?
I ended up doing, that's a great question. I ended up doing a VRBO, and while away on a vacation with my wife earlier that we had planned around all this other stuff, I get a text message that my VRBO that I had booked a year in advance got canceled due to a storm that went through. With, you know, if you remember, there was a snowstorm that kind of hit New Orleans. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess they ended up having frozen pipes, and that was the story. And I lost my reservation. I'm not sure that they didn't have, quote, frozen pipes to decline my relatively inexpensive VRBO reservation to 3 times the price to somebody else. So I ended up having to scramble at the end. Found a place, paid way too much money for it. Great location. Location was probably the best part of the place. The room was clean. The lobby did not smell very well. I think Colin can probably, I think Colin can attest to that. I think they were renovating that whole building to make it a VRBO whole building to different condos, but ended up paying way too much for it. But already had flights, already had reservations, already had paid for the tickets. None of that's refundable.
Right. And how about dinner reservations? You had to do that too, right?
Yeah, we actually did several of those well in advance. We ended up eating at Dickie Brendan's steakhouse for one night. Some guy named, I think it was Adam Sandler, was behind us.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
And ran into, I mean, we saw a bunch of other people, literally walked into Martha Stewart. It was just crazy. But you know, it's one of those big events. It's neat to see all that and kind of be part of it. Even in the Super Bowl, I think the experience of that whole thing was great. The worst part of it was the game. I mean, it was the hype was great. You could feel it going in. And in the first 15 minutes, the first quarter, you could tell the game was over.
Philly's defense dominated that game.
Yeah, I mean, much similar to the way Tampa Bay beat Kansas City several years ago.
Shut them down.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a great 4 that can provide pressure up front and you don't have to constantly blitz, which Philly didn't do, and you can get all the pressure you need, then your back 7 are going to be able to cover whatever you put out there.
The way Seattle shut down Manning. Yeah.
So,
and then you did a Final Four.
Final Four, yes, have done several of those. They're a great event as well. When we apply for those through the NCAA portal. So the way that works is it's about $300 per ticket, but that gets you the session on Saturday, which is both games on Saturday. So the 2 semifinals, and you also get a ticket for for Monday's game. So you get both sessions. And we just apply, and if we get selected, we tend to go. It also made it nice that we had family down in San Antonio, so the hotel was not an issue. We just stayed with family. They were very nice to allow us to borrow a car, so we didn't have to rent a car. So costs were stayed down, but we made a family vacation / sporting event out of the whole thing. So
cool.
I will say the Final Four is probably the least expensive big event that is relatively open to the public, so that if you do decide to go, you're not out thousands.
Like the Super Bowl.
Yeah, the Super Bowl is quite expensive, and those were face value. So, but it's, at that point, it's a once in a lifetime. And, I had kind of semi-planned this for,
You have another one on the list?
No, not right now.
You good?
Not right now. I would like to see a World Series in Baltimore. So
not this year, I don't think. Not with that pitching.
Well, not without some miraculous turnaround and some golden arms coming up from the minor leagues somewhere. It's going to be hard, but we did go see Colin and I did go see the playoff game at Camden Yards last year, so you can throw that in there. Did a bunch of WVU. We like sporting events. Even as the kids grew up, we kind of build vacations around a mini sports event. We'd throw a baseball game in there somewhere, but then we'd be in a city that also had stuff for the girls. So we always had a little bit of everything kind of mixed together.
Well, that's pretty cool to be able to hit those 4 in 12 months. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a blast when you get the opportunity. As I said, life kind of taught me I'd rather find a reason to say no instead of find a reason to say yes anymore.
Yeah.
So,
what was your inspiration with the clock ticking here? Did you just look up and say, "Hey, I'm 50-something years old"?
Yeah, I'm in my mid-50s. Had a little bit of health stuff, and also, we were looking at doing a lot more traveling, my wife and I. Earlier, and then COVID kind of came in, and if you ask almost anybody in healthcare, COVID was brutal.
Mm-hmm.
It
burned a lot of physicians out, nurses.
It's still hanging on, and I don't know if there's a PTSD built into that or it was brutal. From the beginning of not knowing to seeing what it brought, to a certain point, feeling helpless.
It's gotten downplayed as being not that big of a deal in retrospect. As a doctor on the front lines, do you agree with that or disagree with that?
Absolutely not. It was brutal. We finally learned, for the most part, on how to approach it, treat it, and what we had to do. But that learning curve took years and took experience to do it. And it basically, just overwhelmed everything. I don't know how you can, say that you lose 1 million lives out of nowhere and say it's no big deal. I just don't. I don't know how you do that, and all those that just went through everything and spent days, weeks, months on ventilators, and watching loved ones that were completely healthy, and just all of a sudden, you're on you're gasping for breath. But we did learn. We know more now about it, much like everything else. Everybody else has a version 2.0 or whatever, so we've learned a lot. But to downplay it and say it wasn't that big of a deal, I don't know the exact number, but 50 million people in the world died from it. Some ridiculous number. We lost, I think, every bit of over 1 million here in the United States. And we had a very robust vaccine program once it became available. Other countries didn't have that opportunity, and other countries, because of political climate, don't want to report actual numbers either. So we'll never know the exact numbers, but millions of people died from it.
Will there be a different way of handling the next pandemic, because there will be one? Anything learned from this one that will change the way the next one's handled?
I'll say yes, and I'll say no. The people with experience that are probably, many of those are no longer in healthcare because they've been burned out or have moved on to something else that really hasn't wiped them out. But yes, we've learned. Good or bad, we now can make vaccines, or something that should help inoculate people, so that when they do get exposed to the virus that comes up, that they can have a better response to it. But I think with the way some of the COVID fallout has happened, that I think we may well be slow to respond, and that may well cost lives at that point. So it's just, so yes, we've learned, but it really depends on who's in charge, when it happens. There's so many factors out there. But yeah, I would like to say yes, we've learned, but
Well, the West Virginia legislature just came very close to lifting the requirements for vaccinations for school-age kids. And then ultimately that didn't happen. Did we dodge a bullet?
I believe so. I think the statistics follow with that.
We've also heard that vaccines cause diseases, like the measles vaccine causes measles.
That is not true.
Categorically.
We've essentially wiped out multiple childhood diseases with vaccines. Now, if we were seeing measles vaccines causing measles, we would see it in West Virginia. We would see measles all over the place. Even if you had a 1 in a million throughout this, there'd be 300 cases. I mean, even you'd be seeing them from the vaccines that we're giving. We don't see that. Okay. So there, I read the study that you provided me, and basically the 73 that they're talking about. So there is truth that so what that article said was that they have a method to sequence the virus rapidly by PCR, a testing method, and that they were able to diagnose or recognize 73 out of the 194 were probably related to the vaccine. So a small portion of people that are vaccinated, kids mostly, adults as well, if they come in from other countries that are not as robust on their vaccines, get vaccinated, and you can have a measles-like reaction. You can get the rash. You can get some of the cough, the cries of the really runny nose, and the conjunctivitis. So what they wanted to do with this PCR, this testing, is to find out, all right, is this a new measles case, or is this just a reaction to the vaccine? And that's where the PCR comes in, and that's what they were trying to do, is they recognized 73 of these reactions, or these measles-like illnesses were reactions to vaccines. That's all they were saying with that study. It's not causing measles, because no transmission from those 73 ever occurred, but they had measles-like reactions. So instead of having to quarantine all them and do the contact tracing and everything else for those 73, they are now able to find out that the reaction that they had was a measles-like, which happens, but it's not an active measles case. So the study is correct with the numbers, but unfortunately that it does not show that we're causing measles. It just shows that we've now been able to identify a measles-like illness. Can we tell, was it from the vaccine, or is it from a wild measles type, a wild measles virus that comes into the area, usually from out of the country, from either some form of travel, etc., and it comes back in, and that's where it starts.
Doc, appreciate your time this morning. Good to see you again.
Whatever you need, give me a call.
Stay healthy.
I will try.
And you should write a little book about your venture there with the 4 major events.
I don't know.